Hi, my name is Chrissy. I'm the Creatrix of Washington Heights, NYC. This is a knitting, crochet, and crafty podcast coming to you from Washington Heights in New York City. Washington Heights, if you're not familiar with geography in New York, so Washington Heights is located on Manhattan Island, and it is north of Harlem. It's north of Central Park. It's on the west side of the island. It overlooks the Hudson and New Jersey. And it's generally from about West 155th, 156th Street, all the way north to around the 190s. So it's actually a pretty big neighborhood. Broadway actually goes right through Washington Heights. And so it's actually a pretty straight shot to a lot of things on Manhattan Island from here. It's also very close to the George Washington Bridge. So just a little bit about me, just briefly. I am a music educator. I'm the director of education for an after-school music program here in New York City. For 13 years before this, I was a music professor in North Carolina. I have two children. One is Gabriel, who is 5, in kindergarten here in New York City, and my daughter Colleen lives with her dad in North Carolina. And so I'll kind of fill you in a little bit more on family life if you're interested at the end of the podcast. Okay, so let's start with some of the knitting goodness. This podcast will probably be, I'm trying to aim for about 3 to 4 weeks because I want to make sure I have enough time to make things for it, given that I have a full-time job and a full-time job as a mom too after school. So what am I wearing? Let's start with that. So first, we're going to start with what's around my neck. This is the Lightning Bug Shawl. It is a pattern by Laura Aylor. I finished this in the spring of 2018, and I'll show it to you. It's a really beautiful shawl. The minute I saw the pattern, I just knew I had to make this. It really reminded me of the lightning bugs. You can hear that North Carolina come through. The lightning bugs of the summer. And basically, I used 2 different yarns for this. The first yarn, the blackish gray yarn, is by Araucania Huasco, and it is the carbon color, so you can see it's like black and gray. And then the other color is, no surprise, Hedgehog fibers in banana legs. So this shawl has some really interesting things to it that made it a really joyful kind of knit, because it was one of those knits that was just mindless enough in sections that you had a lot of fun just kind of knitting, and then when we get to something interesting, it would break it up enough so that it would keep your interest. It's a paid for pattern, available on Ravelry, so I don't want to give away too much information, but you've got some stranded sections. You've got some really interesting stitches here. I can't remember what Laura calls them, but she calls them her bug stitch, actually, if I remember right. But they turn out to be these beautiful kind of oval patterns. And I've done another one of her patterns that has them in it. It was one of her knit-alongs for like Advent. But yeah, it's supposed to remind you of the flight of lightning bug in the summer. And that laughter you hear in the background is my son Gabriel having fun in the next room watching YouTube. So it's a great shawl. And the sweater I'm wearing is my So Faded sweater by Andrea Mowry. And I talked about this in my last episode. This is my second episode, in case you were wondering. But the top color here, this is Araucania Huasco in emerald. It shows up more blue on screen than it actually is. But in real life, it's a little bit more, there's a little more green to the teal. But it's really definitely a teal color. This brighter pop here is actually MJ Yarns. They're out of Lafayette, Colorado. I used to live there, actually, when I went to grad school. So they hand dye yarn there, and that colorway is called Fruit Juice. It was really, I really like that colorway. That fades into the next 3 yarns, which are all Hedgehog fiber sock. So the first one is Boombox, which has like all of these great pop, like highlighter color pops of color with some black speckles as well. Then that goes into Heyday. So you lose the black and you pick up more blues. You have a lot of the same highlighter colors, but also orange. And then our final color, which is Sorry, not sorry. So I love this sweater. Super comfy to put on, especially at the end of a long day. Today was one of those long days at work. Good day, just a lot going on, a lot of different things happening. So very comfy to wear on weekends. For me, next time I will probably knit this at some point in much more subdued colors, subtle colors. I would probably just make the torso longer for my body shape. Because I do have, I was blessed in the bust region. We'll just call it that. I don't feel like I need to minimize it, but I also realize that it makes the torso shorter of anything I knit. So I just have to like try it on and make sure in future, because, you know, even with stretch, you can, you know, you want to make sure that you get enough length. So it's comfortable to wear with whatever pants you want to wear. Okay, so let's move on to more knitting. And, whoa. There we go. That's pretty good. Okay, time for finished objects. Again, for apologies for any kid noises in the background. All right, so the only finished object I have this week is something small. And it's actually something that came out of something I would technically have frogged originally, or just thrown away, actually. But sometimes, I don't know, you can make beautiful things and give them to other people, and it's meaningful to them. So let me tell you the story of what happened. So I decided in mid-November, after I moved here in mid-October, I was kind of having some down days. You know, change and moving is really hard, especially as you're getting used to a new space. And New York City is definitely one of those places where it can be very difficult, a transition when you first move to it, to get used to things like, you know, not having a car anymore if you give up your car, and having to ride the subway everywhere, and just navigating how things work here. Yeah, New York definitely works like no other place I've lived, and I've lived all over the country. So just having some hard times, and also getting used to my new job, and, you know, the learning curve was rather high on some things there, and there were some really high pressure things that were coming up. So, you know, I just felt like I needed to knit something that was super fun, instead of, okay, another pair of socks, or let me pull out like a whip I've had for a while. I wanted to knit something that was totally different and fun. So I planned to start the Adventurous Wrap before Advent, and I was going to start it actually using some minis that I already had, even though I had Advent calendars. I was not going to get into the Advent calendars until Advent hit. And I did finish my adventurous, I'm sorry if you don't like air quotes, but Adventurous Wrap, my adventurous wrap, right, you know, a couple weeks ago. So, and I've showed that on the first podcast. But so I started the pattern, and I decided I wanted to try to hold it double with some alpaca. And I have used alpaca before, and every time I try to use alpaca, so maybe this podcast will remind me about this, but every time I use alpaca, I end up getting sick. I end up having a sore throat. I end up being stuffy and congested. My hands get really messed up, but it's every time I use alpaca. I wonder, could I possibly be allergic to alpaca? Yes, I probably am. I haven't been tested for it, but all signs point to yes. And given I have numerous allergies to other things, I can recognize the signs. And I don't necessarily want to take 2 Benadryl to knit at night, because it'll knock me out. Sorry, there was a little bit of an interruption from a little person in the next room. Okay, so back to my story about the alpaca. So yes, indeed, I am very much allergic to alpaca. But, so, and I did get pretty far. I mean, enough that it felt like it was work that I had done, and it was really nice yarn. You know, not with the alpaca aside, I doubled that with some really beautiful scrap yarn that I had from other projects. I used some Homespun House, some Nora George that I got as a mini. There's some Malabrigo, some Madeline Tosh, I think, and there is actually some Hedgehog in this. And so I was thinking, well, what can I make? And I'll show it to you in a second. What can I make out of this? Well, I do have a 9-year-old daughter, and she loves her American Girl doll. And she was talking about how she wished she had more clothes for her American Girl doll. And I was like, this might make the perfect shawl for her American Girl doll. And so I actually left ends so she could tie it on because it's going to be a doll for a doll and not a person. So I actually left some ends so she can tie it and untie it. So if I were to untie it, there you go. But there's the little miniature doll shawl I made. There is an end that I need to actually cut off at the bottom that I missed earlier. But yeah, it uses some great yarn. It'll be really nice. My daughter, I showed it to her on FaceTime the other day when we were talking, and this is going to be one of my Valentine's Day presents to her when I send her a package in a week or so for Valentine's Day. So she was so excited. She was super excited. She is one of the most knit-worthy kids I've ever met in my life. She had requested some socks that I talked about on my last episode and showed. But yeah, she is so excited for this, and I don't think she's allergic to alpaca, so that's a bonus. So yes, this is my only finished object for this episode, but I think it's a really great use of something, and I didn't have to frog it, which makes me really happy. I ended up giving the remainder of the alpaca to my friend at work who knits. My friend Steve, Manhattan Fiber Arts. We talked about him last time as well. Okay, so let's talk now about some projects that are on my needles. So these are actually works in progress, and the first one I'm going to start with today are my Franken socks. I'm calling them Franken socks, but they are the Weasley Homestead pattern by Erica Luter. And I'm actually using some minis to create them. And what I was able to do, so let me show you where I was. Here's my second sock. Well, actually my first sock, believe it or not. So I was here, and I only knit one more color, but I knit this much of the second sock. So I feel like I actually got quite a bit accomplished. So yeah, so I've basically paired them up. And what I've been doing, because I do have another project in the works that I'll show you in a minute, but I've been creating magic knot balls for that using my really, really nice yarn. And so this is not all the yarn from this sock. This is there are other projects that had already been started, but I just added to this one so that I can, once this sock is done, I can put this in the bag for the other project. And it's ready to go. I'll talk to you a little bit about the yarn and what I remember about the yarn, because again, these are scraps and some of them I don't know what they are. But this first one up here, this was one of the lucky dips from Nora George that I got recently. Came with my advent calendar. I actually ordered a couple of extra mini skeins because I wanted to do some more scrappy projects. This one right here, it was this was my very first homespun house yarn. It's called Give Peace a Chance. It was one of her sock clubs, so not repeatable, but I was a Beatles fan. I still am a Beatles fan, so very happy with that. If I remember correctly, this is MJ Yarns Opulent in cream, fresh cream. I looked it up. This is another Nora George Lucky Dip. This was from one of my advent calendars. I'm not sure if it's Nora George or Sweet Sparrow, but I'm leaning towards that one is probably Nora George. If I'm wrong, I apologize. This one here I'm pretty sure that one's one of the Sweet Sparrow yarns. And then finally, this one down here is Sweet Georgia yarn. I knit some others. I knit some socks out of this a few years ago. So yeah, so there you go. Oh, it's called Tooth Fairy. So Tooth Fairy on Sweet Georgia. So yeah, super fun project. Okay, so now let's go on to our next work in progress. So since we're talking about the magic knot balls, we might as well talk about what projects I'm using them in. But first I'm going to show off this bag I made. And no, I do not sell bags for anything. I just made this for myself out of some things I had lying around. I made this bag probably 2.5 years ago. So I had made this embroidery. The designer for the embroidery is Lily Popo. I think I remember that correctly. Lily Popo, Lilipopo. I want to say that's it. I will try to link that in my show notes. But the designer's on Etsy, and she has all these kind of cutesy, almost cartoony figures. I definitely chose the colors to kind of go with the fabric because I had some of the other bits of this fabric lying around, and just kind of one of those things, they just all came to me. So like in Stash, I had this fabric because I initially years ago intended to make a dress for Colleen with it. I had these little rosette things. When Colleen was about 2, I was doing a lot of quilting, and so I had put together some squares and I never did anything with them. And this is kind of all the ones I put together. So I said, oh, that'd be kind of cool. I did not quilt them. I just put the squares on as the back side of the bag. And then I had sparkly fabric just because, and then used random bias binding that I had in my stash with some pony beads. So, you know, sometimes you can make just fun stuff out just for yourself. But it's huge. This bag is humongous. And so inside this bag is living my corner-to-corner crochet blanket, which is getting bigger. And the rows take forever. And I started as a crocheter. So I'm a much faster crocheter than I am knitter. So the fact that I was able in the time with the other projects I'm doing get this much done, I'm pretty happy with it. So here we are. So yeah, so it's coming along. We have some really nice yarns in here. We have some total mystery yarns in here. I explained in my first podcast that mystery yarns are abound in my stash because I had a woman, when I started making this blanket, donate like every extra bit of yarn she had from like projects for like the last 10 years or something. She was great. I thanked her profusely because I really wanted to make some scrappy projects and I had no scraps when I first started knitting. I was actually trying to make the mitered square blankets, like one of those, and I have one of those started. I don't know when I'll finish mine. I think that I'm not someone who's a huge blanket knitter in general. I tend to like to crochet my blankets, and so yeah. But I think also because, when I was a crocheter, I used DK or worsted weight for the most part. So, those went a lot quicker. But yeah, it's coming along. It's super colorful. Would I say these represent every color that I knit with? I think there's every color in the rainbow and then some in this. So I think it represents every color on the planet, I think, is what this one's going to be. It doesn't really tell my color story. I think it tells the color story of multiple people. And that's okay. Because it's meant to be fun and it's meant to keep us warm. The plan, I spoke about this last week, the plan is for it to become as big as a queen size bed. At least that's my hope. Yeah, it may take years, and that's fine. But just so you can see, I have this one to go. I have this one. These are magic knot balls waiting. I have this one. This one has lots of sparkle in it. This has a lot of the yarn from my Adventurous Wrap. That one's going to be super fun. And then I have the one I just started. So I have 4 magic knot balls ready to roll. I don't think there's enough. I think what's left in here is the little bit of yarn. Yeah, that's left. As far as fiber content, I think because I've inherited a bunch, what I've put into it has all been some wool type fiber. But what I inherited, there's definitely other stuff. In fact, I know one of the yarns, let me see if it's in here. One of the yarns I inherited had shrimp. Part of it was made with the shrimp casings. It was weird yarn. I mean, it was interesting to knit with. It was just something I never thought I would knit with. I think it was shrimp. It was it came from like the shrimp casings, like the actual shell. Hey, I mean, if we're going to eat the animals, we might as well use as much of them as possible, Yeah, I mean, you don't want to waste. So anyway, it's a fun project. It's basically a mindless knit. It's something that I can't do for too long though. Just because I do have tendonitis and I don't want it to get bad. And the tendonitis for me is, I do have it in my left hand. Sorry, it's a viola hold. I do have it in my left wrist, but actually with crochet, because I crochet with my right arm, it actually, this is my bow arm. And so this motion over and over really activates the tendonitis I have there as well as in my shoulder. So I have to be careful with that if I want to play. It's as simple as that. And if I don't want to be in pain, little things. Okay, so let's talk about some knitting, some other knitting in the works, kind of whips that are going on here. All right, so I went back to my antler hat, and I did spend a day where I just worked. I just started to work on it. So I am through the ribbing now, and I am cabling now, which is super fun. My hands were totally black at the end, and my son kept looking at them and was like, "What is going on, Mom?" So here we go. So So here it is. And my little progress keeper here, that was from the Slug Club. It was a Harry Potter yarn club from a homespun house, and that was when the Slug Club was the yarn for the month. And the Slug Club, this is like the Sunday that they had as part of the shenanigans, basically. And then my stitch markers, some are from So Sweet Violet, actually. Very sweet, very pretty. And I'm putting them where the cable repeat is to help me. So yeah, it's fun so far. I just don't want to have to scrub my hands that much. So I've been working on it like for a few hours on the weekend, when I have some time where I can really concentrate on the cable patterns. But yeah, I like the yarn. The yarn, I talked about it last time, but it is a worsted weight yarn. And it is it's actually from a farm in the Catskills called the Catskill Merino Sheep Farm. And I talked about this last time that it's a heritage breed. It's the Saxon Merino sheep. So yeah, check them out. It's really nice yarn. Again, one of the things I learned about, I was really thinking about between this podcast and the last one, was kind of my likes and dislikes about yarn in general and why I gravitate towards certain projects versus others. And I'm not gravitating towards that one. And I was thinking about it, and I realized, because I did a lot of work with some single ply yarn recently. That's in a single ply. Colorway is Logwood. It's naturally dyed, which is why it comes off in your hands. But I was doing some other work on my Adventurous Wrap, and there's some of the skeins, many skeins were single ply, and they're beautiful yarn. But I realized I do not like knitting with single ply. I love the results, but knitting with it drives me bonkers because it twists on itself a lot of times because there's too much action because it only spun one way. And then I find it gets knotted on itself, and I'm just like, I don't have time for this. Like, I just want to knit. I don't want to untangle my yarn every 2 seconds. So yeah, there's another project that also has some single ply yarn, and I realized that's why it's not getting done or hasn't been getting done. But this podcast is going to help me get it done because I am really excited to have this hat. I think that it's going to be for me, I decided. And I'm going to go invest in a pom-pom. So I'll go to one of the local yarn shops here in New York and pick one out. And yeah, can't really put it on right now, but I think it'll be nice. I think it's time for me to have a new hat because I can't remember if I talked about this on the last podcast or if it happened right after, but I have this hat that I wear all the time. I really like it. It has it's by Amy Vandelar, and I want to say it's called the beeswax hat, if I'm right. But it looks like what you would see inside of a beehive, with the pentagon shapes, hexagon. I can't remember. Hexagon. 6, yeah. So, but anyway, it looks like the inside, and the color is kind of this. It's the color you would think of and associate with honey, and it's like a yellow. It's like a mustardy yellow, and I wear it all the time. And then my son was wearing it all the time. But then I took my dog out for a walk, and it was super windy. It gets really, really windy where I live because of the wind coming off the Hudson, and Washington Heights. That's the part of Manhattan Island where it gets really, really narrow. And the Harlem River's on the other side, so you get like the breezes from both the rivers kind of converging, and it will just blow you over, like literally blow you over. There are times I have to, my child is like, whoa. So I have to so I was walking my dog, and this wind came, and it was freezing. I don't live in the tundra, but it feels cold. So it was I want to say it was in the 20s. Like low 20s, and this wind came while I was taking him for his nightly walk, and it just blew that thing off my head into the middle of the street. Cabs, whoever, I am not going after that hat. So I was like, oh, well, this one better be for me, and I better knit it fast. Well, luckily the next morning, the wind blew it right back onto the sidewalk, and I just took it inside, and I washed it when I washed my socks. So I have a washer in the apartment, which is fairly rare in New York City, but I was able to wash it using some wool wash. And then I let it, I just laid it flat to dry, just like I do with my socks. So yeah, so I rescued the hat, and so I can wear it again. But yeah, I'm looking to have a new hat, just to have a different hat in case I lose one because of wind, or my child decides he wants to wear it. So, yeah. So there you go. So that's the Antler Toque, actually. Antler Toque by Tin Can Knits. I think it's a free pattern on Ravelry. I want to say it is. I know I got it for free because a couple years ago they had an advent calendar where you could get a pattern for free, and I got that one, and I think I got that one through that. But I want to say it might be a free pattern. I know the cardigan is not. But yeah. Anyhow. Okay, so next work in progress. Speaking of single ply yarn and things not getting finished because of single ply yarn. So last time I talked about these mitts. They're the Witchcraft mittens. And the name of the book is actually... Sorry, I gotta put on my glasses for this because it's across the room. Aha. Okay, mittens from around Norway. I took my glasses off. I normally wear them all the time, but the glare on my glasses is really bad when I'm podcasting, and so it might be nice to not see the computer screen in my eyes. So anyhow, these are the Witchcraft mittens. I've been working on them since January 1st, 2019. I only have one done. Well, it's not even done, but I've only got one started. So here it is. But I am further. Let me move my... There we go. So last week... or last podcast, it wasn't last week, but last podcast, I was to where the stitch marker is here. And so I've been able to finish the first motif. And, sorry, my musician came in motives. And then I started the second one. So, I can work on this in spurts. It's not something that's easy to work on when I'm watching something really interesting. But if I have like a podcast going on in the background, that's something where people are just chatting a lot instead of necessarily showing or talking about the knitting, it's fairly easy to work on. So yeah, I did work on this a couple times since the last podcast, and I do, and it's been okay. I don't mind this stranded knitting at all. I really enjoy it. I do have a mistake or two around the thumb, but I fixed it. It's just knitting. Doesn't like Stephen West say that? It's just knitting. So you can fix stuff. Like I can fix stuff. I figure if you're looking below my thumb, then why are you looking below my thumb? It's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna get too fussed about it because I'm not tinking back all those rows with all of with all of that stuff. No way. I do want to wear them though because these are super snuggly. But I realized the reason I don't like knitting these is not the color work, because I've done color work before. I mean, I did a swag, loved it, didn't have this issue. It's because one of the yarns is single ply. And you can even see here, it's tangling itself. Now, yes, I realize my yarn is twisting because I've twisted the strands, but it's such a bigger pain to untwist it every few rows, and I'm sure there are ways to do this better. But it's okay. I'm fine. It's twisting because look at this. This is not single ply. It's not twisting. You even cough or look at this sideways and this stuff will just start to twist like crazy. So anyway, I'm wrong. Look, the other one's going to twist too. But anyway, you get the idea. It's just been driving me bonkers. And since I've never had so many single ply projects on the needles at once that I'm actively going back and forth between that and non-single ply. But I'm realizing that's the reason why. Love the colors. So just to go over the yarn real quick. The purple is Malabrigo. Trying to remember what the base is. It's the single ply. This is Malabrigo Mechita in the color Eggplant. So that's the purple. And the peachy color with all of the really beautiful speckles, that is Monarch by Hedgehog. So it's got a peach base with like some darker peaches and oranges and hot pink and some of the eggplant color coming through. Really, really pretty, really, really beautiful. And I mean, I get so happy when I get to that peach color, and I think it just really pops. So super fun. I hope I'll have these by next winter. I think at this stage, that's probably a good plan. Like not make... Hopefully. But we'll talk more about that in a minute, about some other plans I have to help me get some of this stuff off the needles so I can knit what I want when I want. Okay. Sorry again about the child noise in the background. All right. Next work in progress. And this one is a biggie. I showed this last week. I've gotten some work on it. Maybe hard to tell. because, you know, sweaters, they take time. Somebody's upset in the other room. He's talking to the TV. He's okay. Anyway, so here is my breathing space by Veera Valimaiki, and it's in Malabrigo sock. This top one is Malabrigo sock in chocolate Amargo, which is a really beautiful chocolatey color. Very tonal. I mean, very tonal. And then the stripes are Teacup by Hedgehog Fibers. It's Hedgehog sock. Again, not single ply, which is why I've been enjoying knitting on this, because it is truly mindless for me. Because right now I'm at the point where I'm at the very bottom, where it is just the chocolate color, and it's hard to tell. Let me find my progress keeper. So I had basically, the last time I showed it, I had just started this section. So, yeah. I mean, I've gotten a good, I think I measured it. It was like more than 2 inches. And I have a long way to go still. So, I'll just be plugging away at this. There are several series I'm currently watching. So, this is really easy to do when they're on and just, you know, just chilling. So that's easy. And then I'll have to do, of course, I'll have to do the sleeves. But then I get to do striping again, which makes it a lot faster. So I'm knitting this. I've been knitting this since August, if I remember correctly. And the size, it's definitely not the largest size. I want to say it's probably like somewhere around the 44 bust, 44, 48 bust. So it's not a small sweater. And if you know this sweater at all, this is a paid for pattern on Ravelry as well. But we're at the point where I've done all the increases. And so it's like an A-line type thing. So it gets much wider at the bottom, and it's also asymmetrical. And so, because there's just a lot of stitches on the needle. So you just go around and around and around. And so it's mindless knitting, but it's also a lot of knitting. So yeah, I'm just going to keep plugging away at that. Again, something I hope to get finished, but, you know, deadline-wise, we'll talk about deadlines later and some of the thoughts I have about organizing my stash and organizing my knitting life in general. But we'll talk about how that all plays together. Okay. And then my final work in progress. I did not show this last time. And I'm back. And my little man was hungry, so I had to go get him something to eat. Yeah, so I need to probably move it along a little bit more. So our next work in progress is something I haven't shown. This is something I started from my mom. So my mom, let me close up my other project bag. My mom has some severe wool allergies, or at least she thinks she does. And so even if she doesn't, I'm sure she's allergic to alpaca like I am, and mohair and stuff like that. But, you know, wool is supposed to be hypoallergenic for most people. At least that's what I've read and been told. But she just, and I find like superwash wool, because there's not much natural fiber that's actually in contact with your skin, because it is soaked in, I believe it's like a type of plastic or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it does have a coating around it. So if the natural fiber is there, it doesn't quite feel the same as like traditional non-superwash wool, right? So you can feel the difference between them. But anyway, I've tried to make her things before, shawls, and she can do socks. She can do socks, especially if it's superwash. But I've only made her 2 pairs of socks that, well, one she stole from me. I think she thought they were for her, but I just said, hey, how do you like my new socks? And she said, she put them on her feet and she took them with her. What are you gonna do? So it's fine. She can have them. It's okay. I just find it really funny that like the one time I didn't intend to knit her something, she wanted them. It's okay. That's cool. They were actually in her favorite hockey team's colors, and so that's probably why. So they were Ducks of Anaheim colors. So she really enjoyed that. But she has a hard time with all the wools, and so does my sister, and I think my aunt as well. So that part of the family really tricky with wool allergies. So I tried to start a shawl this past summer that would be something that my mom could use. And so it's the Lempy shawl. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. Could not tell you the name of the designer to save my life right now. Sorry, the Southern came out. But anyway, here it is. And this is as far as I've gotten. I basically worked on it for 2 days. this summer, but I decided this is something worth salvaging, and I will probably work on this in the summertime. It is 100% cotton. So we have two different types of cotton. Well, they're all three colors. They're just two different. Let me try that again. Sorry. It's been a long day. Did I say it's been a long day? It's been a long day. It's all right. Okay, so there's some random hedgehog on here. Oh. I don't clean out my bags well enough. All right, so these are the three colors I chose because, you know, my mom does wear blue. I think this, like, taupey brownish color is, like, her favorite color of all time, and then cream goes with everything. And the reason I say this is probably, like, one of her favorite colors is she has painted so many rooms this color in the lifetime of me knowing her. Like, she loves this color. She loves this color. And blue is just, you know, it's a kind of a royal blue. And, you know, it's kind of nautical. My parents live in Virginia, right on the river, as they say down there. They live about 35 minutes outside of Williamsburg, Virginia, in the Tidewater region of Virginia. So they actually have a house that's it's kind of attached to a farm. So a farm surrounds it. There are houses that bought lots from the farmer years ago, and they developed the lots and made houses, and the farmland is still around it. So but basically where most of the houses are is basically on this saltwater creek that dumps out into one of the major rivers in the area, which also dump out into the Chesapeake Bay, if I remember right. And so you get, like, it's a saltwater creek, so you get sea life in there. You get crabs and oysters and all sorts of, like, beautiful seabirds, and you also get jellyfish, as I found out a couple summers ago. Jellyfish stings are not fun. And don't pee on them. If you've ever heard that saying, some people say, oh, pee on the sting, it'll take. It's terrible. I don't know if you've ever had a jellyfish sting. I'm sorry, that's a tangent. But they don't pee on them. It's not hygienic. Two, it doesn't even help. I think it was supposed to be the acid in your urine is supposed to help. It doesn't help. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I don't go swimming there. One, I don't like to go swimming there if I can't see the bottom because I can't see the jellyfish. Two, I know if the water, like certain times a year, the jellyfish are more likely to be out there. And so I do not swim even on the hottest days out there. Or I don't go far into the water. Like, I don't mind being close to the shore, but I don't go far. Anyway, so back to the lumpy shawl. So yeah, it's just garter and it's got lace panels, and then it's more garter and more lace and stuff like that. So yeah, this was not the most enjoyable knit. I don't mind the garter part. The garter part's fine. But again, because I do have tendonitis and stuff like that, like, I find that knitting with non-wool or non-animal fibers in general is harder on my hands. So, got to protect my hands as a professional musician. Anyway, living in another self-made bag. Oh, most of my bags are self-made. So yeah. But yeah, it's fun stuff. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about some upcoming works in progress. All right, so I'm going to take this bag, and this is just a bag my daughter gave me. It's a really nice bag. It's actually a Veera Bradley bag. It's beautiful. I just haven't used it yet. So, couple of thoughts. And yeah, I'm just going to go through a couple of things that I think I'm going to be making. And while we're here, I think it's time for me to talk about fact that I think we're going to do some make-alongs. So I do have a Ravelry group. I have a few members, not very many. So if you're interested in participating in any of these make-alongs, just join the Ravelry group, and there will be prizes. Well, we're back. And Gabriel wanted to say hello. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Okay, so let's try this again. Yeah, I had a visitor. See, I asked him if he wanted to be on the podcast. He said, yes, I want to be on the podcast. I want to be on the podcast, like baby Layla. Because he's talking about Knitting Expat's daughter, Layla. He's been watching her for over 2 years, and he's absolutely in love with her. Like, I think, one, they would be best friends, but two, I'm pretty sure he wants to marry her. He's only 5, so let's see. Okay, so back to make-alongs. So I'm going to be doing some make-alongs in our Ravelry group and hosting them there, and there will be some prizes. So what am I going to make for the making along? So I talked last time about the elephant promenade sweater, and I didn't get a chance to show the yarn, but I went through and found my yarn. So the yarn I'm going to use, I'm going to do the short sleeve version, so it doesn't take as much yardage, anywhere near the amount of yardage that it does for the full length version. But main color is going to be in Yoth Yarns, and it's in the Little Brother base, 435 yards for 100 grams. It's an 80-10-10, so 80 merino, 10 cashmere, and 10 nylon. It's super yummy yarn. And the color is called Concord Grape. In real life, this is actually a darker color with... it's hard to explain, but it's actually less blue. There's more of a green undertone to it in real life. Let me see if I can. It's hard because, yeah, the camera I'm using is a camera from my computer. So it's not showing exactly true, but it's still a very pretty color. And the contrast color for the elephants and all the other fun color work will be this. So this is a Homespun House Yarns. This was a yarn of the month, and it was the Long Winter from the Little House in the Prairie Yarn Club. This was from last year. This is an 80% merino, superwash merino, 20% nylon, 407 yards for 100 grams, and also super squishy. And so I think this will make a beautiful elephant promenade sweater, short sleeve. So something I can wear for multiple months. I think the blues in it are complementary without, I think you'll see all the colorwork blues in this because it's different enough. So I think it's going to be super fun, and I don't have any sweaters that are kind of this color. And I could wear this to work. I can wear all my sweaters to work. I don't often wear neon to work, but like my Zweig I do wear to work all the time. So yeah, that's an upcoming project. And so the cowl that I'm hosting is going to be called the Animal. And it's going to be open to any knitting, crocheting, embroidery, and that's cross stitch or other embroidery projects, and sewing projects. Actually, I'm cool with sewing projects too that have an animal theme, which is pretty cool. And I'll talk about the prizes for that cowl in a little bit. But yeah, that's one of my projects for that. Another project, and I will insert a picture of what the pattern looks like. But Gabe chose this color from my stash, and I'm going to make him a pair of mitts. The mittens are the pop-up owl mitts. So they're a mitten where it's like convertible, but it has an owl cable on the top, and I thought that would be really cute for him, and he really wanted this color. I gave him several options of what was in my stash. He really only had like 2 options based on the weight, because I don't have a ton of this like Aran weight yarn. But this is Debbie Bliss Cas Merino Aran. And yeah, it should make a nice pair of mitts, at least. And if this isn't enough yardage, and I'm going to double check the yardage, I have kind of an olive green color. This color is 300065. Yeah, but there's like an olive green color I have more yardage in because I made him a flax sweater 2 years ago. That I'll be able to make it if I'm not going to use this one because I don't have enough yardage. I can always make a hat out of this for him. All right, so that's another project that I'll be making. And then finally, and I hope my famous alpaca allergy doesn't get to me on this. This I might actually take some Benadryl with because I really want to make this thing. This is called, and I just want to double check. Yep, it is. It's called Squeal! And it's a pig. It's a little piggy. And it's super cute. Knit pig. I fell in love with it when I saw it, and I thought it'd be perfect to make for my daughter, Colleen. So her birthday's in April. So I thought, hey, I've got this kind of pink. It's like the colorway is actually, of course I can't say. It's like tea rose. I think it's called tea rose. It's showing up more purple than it actually is in real life. But yeah, it's a little bit pinker in real life. And my plan is to like get some ribbon, some like teal blue ribbon, and some really cute safety eyes, like the ones that look like real eyes with colors. maybe some blue or green eyes to go in this little piggy. I think it'll be super cute. So yeah, I would like to do that for a birthday present for her. So that's one make-along, and for that make-along, I will show you the prizes I picked out. So one of the things I did this weekend was go through the stash that I brought to New York, because I have some amazing yarn that I got a long time ago. I'm only one person, and I do love to knit, but as we know, I don't like to knit single ply, we found out. And I have some really nice single ply, guys, that I know other people will absolutely love. And I also generally don't knit with, not to say I never do, but I just don't knit as much with heavier weight yarns. And so when I do have them, I have to have specific projects in mind. And I basically got some heavier weight yarns on a clearance when my local yarn shop in Winston-Salem, North Carolina was going out of business for a really great deal. And the colors are nice. I just know I'm not going to knit that much bulky weight yarn. So let me show you the prizes for the Animal. And we'll go over some more details about that. But the prizes I have are this bulky weight. It's Deluxe Chunky by Universal Yarn. I have 2 skeins of it. Each skein is 100 grams, so 120 yards, so 240 yards. So that'll be one prize. And the colorway is Berry Crush. And there's some really great patterns for bulky weight that are super quick to knit. Those are words. Super quick to knit up. And I think this would just make a great set. This is all natural wool. It's 100% wool. There's no it's not superwash at all. We know I'm allergic to the alpaca. I would say I wouldn't want it. I think on my forehead I would have a problem, but I don't have a problem with it on my neck. So there you go. But it might be okay after a few minutes, because I know sometimes your body adjusts but if you're super sensitive, I don't know if this would be great. But hey, I have other prizes. I do have other prizes. Oh, by the way, one of the prizes will also come with this World Wildlife Tote. I just donated some money to them, because there's just terrible things going on in this world with animals. And they used to be my yearly donation when I would set up my donations through work. And since I don't work at that place anymore, yeah, so I just, gave them a little bit of money to help fund a ranger and to help plant some trees as part of it. Okay, so some other prizes. Okay, so the next prize, this is some nice yarn, y'all. There are single ply, though. So the first one is Eggplant Mechita. This is actually the same colorway I'm knitting those mittens in. I just happen to have a ton of skeins of this. I had 3 skeins total, I think, and I did make a shawl out of 1.5 of them, so I had a half a skein left. That's what I'm making the mittens out of, but I have a full skein here. And Eggplant Mechita Malabrigo, really squishy, really, it's nice if you like single ply. But to go with that, and this is a much coveted skein, but I have to be honest with myself, I'm not a fan of the single ply. You can be a fan of the single ply. I hope you knit something beautiful with it, actually. Skinny Singles by Hedgehog Fibers in the Bramble color. So these two will go together as a prize. I think they will be a beautiful something or other. 2-color something or other. So, how much yardage is in the Malabrigo? In the Mechita, for 100 grams, you get 420 yards. And it is 100% superwash merino. For the Hedgehog, you get an unknown quantity of yardage. It doesn't say on the ball band. Oh, it does. Well, it's 100 grams. 366 meters. And so it's probably close to 400 yards. So yeah, it should be really fun. And the speckles in this are gorgeous. So it's got that kind of eggplanty color, but it's also got these cool pops of blues and pinks, and it's got, this area is really cool. That's why I got this yarn, was this. And it's got some greens, and so really pretty, meant to kind of represent what the brambles of the brambles you get in the woods that have berries and all sorts of yummy stuff growing on them. So those two go together. And then, okay, so let's talk about our next prize. So this one is another single ply yarn. It is from Dragonfly Fibers. I got it a few years ago in Virginia at a local yarn store. It's called Walking on the Sun. It's on their Pixie base, 475 yards, 100% superwash merino. And so yes, that too is up for grabs in the make along, the animal. And then finally, our last one, and this is actually not single ply, but I have a lot of random sock skeins, and I like these colors, but I haven't knit with it yet, so I mean, might as well just hand it over to somebody who would really love it. So this is actually, this is Saki Silk from Wisdom Yarns, and it basically stripes into different stripes. I've actually seen someone knit this into a shawl, and it was actually really cool. But the colors are kind of maroon, like a really dark maroon burgundy, purple, and teal. And it's super soft. It's 55% fine merino superwash, 25% nylon, and 20% silk. And these actually make great socks, believe it or not. 100 grams, 444 yards. So this is the final prize in the animal, at least that I have. So we can talk a little bit about the cowl itself, and you can decide if you want to participate. So basically, you can knit about, it can be about any animal. It could be, the pattern can have an animal in it. It can feature an animal or a bird or an insect or something. Rare animals like dragons and unicorns are very much appreciated. It can be knitted, crochet, sewn, embroidered, or cross-stitch. And it is going to run from now until April 30th, 2020. Whips are also going to be allowed to be used in the make-along as long as the object is less than 50% complete. And double dipping is totally and absolutely allowed and encouraged in my make-alongs as well as other people's. So yeah, so that's basically about this make-along. The second make-along I'll be doing is actually one that I was thinking about when I basically went through and totally cataloged all of my yarn in my stash to see what I would like and actually keep and use and keep myself from buying more yarn if I can help it. I don't mind buying an odd skein here or there, but I have so much yarn that I absolutely love and I want to use and have patterns picked out for. And so I basically mapped all of my sweater quantities to specific projects. So on my queue in Ravelry, I have that, and all my yarns are now photographed and in Ravelry, except for the little bits and bobs that are leftovers from things. So the next cowl, or make-along, is called the Spring Cleaning Mal. And it's basically clearing our needles, hooks, hoops, bobbins, and looms. So this is for whips older than 3 months old that we're knitting, crocheting, embroidering, cross-stitching, spinning, or weaving. So I don't know about you, but I love getting things off my needles, off my hook. And this is one of those things where this is going to give me the opportunity to kind of challenge myself to get things that have been long-term projects done. And so this is going to start now, and that's Gabriel laughing at me. This is going to start now and run until May 31st, 2020. And in both make-alongs, we're going to have chatter threads and finished objects threads. So talk in your chatter thread and finished objects just for your finished object. And again, double dipping is allowed. So if you have, like, I don't know, if you've been working on a sweater that features an animal or has even animal-related yarn, you can enter it for both, as long as it's 3 months old and a whip and less than 50% complete. So in this one, the spring cleaning one, it's going to have 3 prizes, 2 for our finished object thread and 1 for the chatter thread. And basically you get your choice, depending on what is your craft of choice. And so you can choose a pattern from Ravelry equaling $10 or less, or you can choose an embroidery pattern from Etsy equaling $10 or less. So those are the make-alongs. Those are the prizes. I will have more information about that next time as we go through. Yeah, because Gabe is definitely getting ready to have me back in his life right now. So I do have ideas for other make-alongs coming up. And also, one of the other kind of news items when it comes to knitting for me is, so on Ravelry, I'm part of this group and have been for years and years, called the Starfleet Fiber Arts Corps. And it's been 2 years since I really participated. And I looked it up. I'm actually a second commander. I think that's my level. Anyway, in this group, so I was an officer. I was definitely a high-level officer in the group based on how many projects I had completed. Well, I've decided to re-enlist for the next round, so that'll start in February, and that will also motivate me to get some things done because works in progress, you can complete one for the brig, and then they'll have various other things. So I'm going to wait to cast on for a couple of my projects until February 1st so that perhaps like the mittens I'm going to make for Gabriel will go in that. And so I'm going to have some other kind of knit-alongs, and I'll probably talk about those in upcoming episodes or podcasts. So now I'm going to move on to some personal stuff about what we've been up to here, just to kind of let you know what's going on in our lives. So if you're not interested in that, I just want to thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful crafty week until we meet again. So, so basically what's been going on is in my life as Director of Education, we are in teacher observation season, which means I'm out at the schools and I'm watching our teachers and helping them get better to be teachers. We're also in recital season, so every single day I am traveling from one school site to the next. And it's definitely been a journey. We're also in grant writing season because most of the grants for next fiscal year are coming due. And so even though I don't write those grants, sometimes I have to go for foundations. And that's my son yawning. Sometimes I have to go to foundations to help present the ideas, or I have to give information to our grant person to make sure that he has the educational information he needs. Other things that are going on. So Gabriel and I went to a mommy or like a family yoga class where it was for parents and kids or caregivers and kids. And that was fun. Sort of. He wanted to go. He goes to yoga once a month with his kindergarten class as a field trip in the Bronx. And he really, really wanted to go. But once we got there, he kind of had, it was kind of a rougher day for him. Group activity was not his forte. So I ended up running around a lot in that class just to keep him out of trouble a little bit. He kind of self-separated, and I just wanted to make sure he was okay. But part of the class, he did participate. He didn't do what the rest of the class was doing, but he was participating in a way. So I was doing down dog, and he decided to go underneath me, say, "Hi, Mommy." I was like, "Ooh, you better get you better get away before Mommy falls on you." So he was kind of doing that, and we talked a little bit. That's in Harlem. It's at Harlem Yoga. So they have those on Saturday mornings. So here's the thing is, I paid for 5 classes, so we're going to go back. I don't know if we're going to go back every week for 5 times in a row, but we'll go back. He just needs to get used to it, I think, and used to the environment. What else is going on? So I didn't share this in the last podcast, but my son is autistic. And so we're going through the process of getting an individual educational plan set up for him in New York City. He had this done in North Carolina. We've been doing these things since he was 2. We got him diagnosed he was at 2 because we saw the signs. As an educator, I knew what the signs were to look for, and I've worked with children with autism and young adults with autism before. So kind of knew the signs, saw it developing. He was a preemie. I was an older mom when I had him, and there were complications. I had severe preeclampsia and was on bed rest for the last 5 weeks of my actual pregnancy. I went onto bed rest in my 7th month in the hospital. And he had to be born. He was going to be born 3 weeks early, but he was born 3 weeks earlier than that. So he was actually born 6 weeks early. So, I mean, healthy, he was fine. He was only in the NICU, the intensive care unit for newborns, for 1 week. I think my recovery was a lot harder because I'm one of the people you hear about when you hear about preeclampsia, where it gets worse after pregnancy. So I actually had some difficulties afterwards, and recovery is hard after pregnancy, but 2 after a C-section, and 3 after being on bed rest for so long and just dealing with trying to raise a premature baby. So anyway, he's fine now. Health-wise, he's great. He's got a cold today, which is partly why he's been so active, because he's actually bored out of his mind because he had to stay home from school. But yeah, he's doing really well, and we're just going to find out what services they're going to give him in New York City, because they didn't accept his IEP, even though they're supposed to. Part of the problem is he had an IEP for a pre-K student, because in North Carolina, his age is for pre-K, But in New York City, his age is for kindergarten. And so when we moved here, literally 1 week passed and he went from pre-K to kindergarten. So he's been a trooper. Academically, his teacher isn't so worried. It's more about his focus and his ability to communicate and just do some of the things that, other kids in the class find easier, basically. And just getting him the services he needs. So we're working on that, and that's coming up soon. Sorry, he just kicks the computer. Colleen's doing really well. She just got all the stuff for her braces to have headgear, and so that's happening. And she's actually in California right now. A family member of my ex-husband's wife, her stepmom, one of her family members passed away, and so they're in California right now. So, she's going to the beach. That's what she was telling me. She's like, Mommy, I'm going to the beach. It's going to be cool. It's going to be great. I don't think she remembers that the beach in California is cold in the winter, even in Southern California. So she's there right now, but she's doing a lot better in school. And just, she's doing okay. So yeah, other than that, things are going fairly well for me and getting settled in and doing a lot of good work. And yeah, I guess that's it for this week. So I'm sorry if this was a bit fragmented. I will definitely put information in the down bar below, and there will also be show notes on Ravelry in the Ravelry group. Information, and there's Gabriel. You gonna say hi? Can you say hi now? It's always an adventure. Well, anyway, happy knitting, everybody. Have a great couple weeks. Bye.